I'm Maryn.
And I'm Christie.
And you're listening to Hung, a podcast where we talk about true crime from the court of law to the court of public opinion. Okay, welcome back to Hung. We are in part 3 of our deep dive into Michael Peterson and the death of Kathleen Peterson. Once again, just as a reminder, my mom Christie is going to be examining the case just through evidence presented to the jury. And then a few episodes from now, I'll step in and let her know all the things the jury didn't get to hear, all the new developments. And we know there are lots. We know you're aware of them because it's been a pretty well-covered case. I want to sit down and watch the Netflix documentary about it soon, get some info from it.
Me too. I'm curious to hear what is new because this case is 25 years old.
Yeah.
So that's been a long time.
Yeah, it has been a long time. I was just looking, he's like in his 80s now.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
They're both second marriages and
true.
But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, how time flies.
Mm-hmm.
In our first 2 episodes, we covered the first responders, listened to 911 calls, talked to some financial experts, listened to police officers and detectives, many supervisors, talking about their experience with the case and their insights, and got a little into the forensic evidence that had come back. So today we are going to be covering digital forensics experts, a forensic meteorologist, a mystery witness that I'm sure you'll all be excited to hear from, as well as the blood spatter expert from the State Bureau of Investigations and another lab tech that inspected Michael Peterson's bloody shorts.
We caught you red-shorted, red-pantsed.
Yep. Yeah, some pretty big questions that we're going to discuss today about blood evidence that I think is pretty key. And is there something with this mystery witness that adds to potential motive? And that will take us all the way to, I believe, in the early 20 days. I don't know exactly. I lost count, but we cover multiple days of testimony with the blood spatter expert. And we ended at day 17 last time. So I would say we're somewhere day 20 something at the end of this episode.
Great. So probably about the halfway point.
That's right. Halfway for sure. Except I haven't listened to the end of the case, so I can't actually be sure.
Well, you said it was like 50-something days, right? So 20-something
yeah,
would be.
Right. Yeah, if we keep at this pace, we're about the halfway mark, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
With that being said, we are going to turn back to the trial starting on day 18.
Yes. Okay, so day 18 starts with William Haggard, who he was looking a little haggard, I must say, when they're introducing him, and he graduated from Yale in 1942.
Oh, how do you wind up with, like, you got, like, a Peterson or a Smith, and then you got a Haggard, or you hear some bad last names. I had a friend whose last name was Sweat. Or, yeah, like, not spelled the same way, but, it's like, how did these names come up?
How do you spell sweat, not spelled sweat?
It was S-W-E-T-T.
Okay. I was trying to imagine, how else could you spell that and have it still sound the same?
Yes.
Well, fascinating to think of a forensic meteorologist. I'm not sure how often it would come into play in a trial that you're needing to assess the weather that was occurring.
Maybe for bodies that were found outside somewhere, and you could talk about what the weather was like from the time of their disappearance to when they were found and how that may play a role in speed of decomposition or things like that.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a really good point. If they were missing for an extended period of time or something, that you can get a better idea of when that death might have occurred. So that's a really good point. Good job, Maryn.
Well, it doesn't apply here, and this is the case where we have a forensic meteorologist.
Yeah.
So I mean, tell me, is he going to tell us it's just not good pool weather? Like, let's.
I could have told you that for a lot cheaper. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that it did seem strange to me, the idea of them going outside on December 8th to sit around the pool together for 2 hours, and then Michael stays out there for almost another hour. That's 3 hours starting at midnight.
Yeah.
In December.
That's weird. That's really weird.
And I'm also thinking about the fact that we know there were multiple weather-related motor vehicle accidents that had happened. When he calls at 2:40 a.m., there have been all these crashes that have taken place. So would they really have been sitting outside, or he have been sitting outside for close to 3 hours that time of year? Mm-hmm. So I think it's questioning the credibility of the story. Does it actually match up, especially because it took her some time to bleed out? Mm-hmm. And how long was she likely laying there? And was he really not aware of this, and he was somewhere else and didn't find her for this extended period of time? So I think that's likely why they're looking at this at all. Does this story that he's telling actually make sense when you look at the details surrounding it? Because it does seem a little strange, and because his initial story, if you remember, was that he had gone outside to turn off the pool lights, and he came back in and found her, which is very different from, I was sitting outside for 45 minutes and I came in and found my wife at the bottom of the stairs. So clearly he didn't just go turn out pool lights and walk back in and she was dead and all of this had happened within minutes. That's just not realistic. So he had to have been somewhere else. Where was he? And this is the thing that he says to answer that question. That he said there is no wind, so we're not dealing with any wind chill factor. The temperature at midnight would have been around 55 degrees, and it would have continued dropping till about 51 degrees at 2 a.m. That's pretty cold. And when you consider that Michael was wearing what?
Basketball shorts or shorts?
So he's wearing canvas cargo shorts, and he's wearing a short sleeve t-shirt. 55 degrees.
Yeah, that's weird. She's wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt.
Right.
But he is not, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, and those tennis shoes that were at the bottom of the stairs near Kathleen's body, there are also some socks there, and they were two socks inside one another, so one pair on top of the other. So he was extra socks, right?
One of those, you know what, we've lived in Florida. There are some weird people in Florida that wear shorts in the winter.
Yeah? Do they sit outside for almost 3 hours?
The ones I came into contact with, I think, were mostly middle schoolers who wanted to be cool.
Of course. And
I'm
then
not cold.
But you're not cool.
Yeah, they're just cold.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so he also shows what a normal, like the average person, what their comfort zone is. And obviously during different times of the year, that comfort zone changes. When you're in the summer, colder temperatures feel colder, right? And in the winter, the comfort zone for 80% of the population is between 66 and 72 degrees. So this was 10 degrees on the low end, at the warmest temperature that it was likely to be, being 55. As cold as someone might feel comfortable, 66. That's a pretty big difference there.
It's really strange.
Yeah, without a jacket or anything, that does seem a little odd. The defense came up and pretty much just was like, so the state paid you $160 an hour to answer the question, would it be comfortable for persons to sit outside the night of December 8th/9th? Well, I mean, yep, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Yeah, but the defense also wanted to bring up that, well, different people have different tolerances to temperature. And are you aware that the Petersons kept their inside temperature at 65 degrees?
That is cold.
Yeah, but if you look at what the comfort zone is 66 to 72. So that is right there at the edge of normal people's comfort zone.
I mean, for me in my house, I keep things 71 is for me. And I have some friends who keep it cold in their house and probably around that. And it is cold to me. I would not call it comfortable.
Yeah, well, you're
especially
also...
in the winter. Why would you want your house cold in the winter?
Yeah, I mean, it's 10,000 square feet. Are they wanting to heat that much space,
That's fair.
I think they did use the fireplace in that kitchen area, that main part of the house, and maybe they were using that to keep things warmer in that area where they actually spend time. Mm-hmm. But I want to point out that 71, that's also within this comfort zone.
For
so
sure.
It's like, okay, well, that shows two different people. And even within that comfort zone, some people are comfortable closer to the lower end, some people closer to the higher end.
For sure.
I don't know how many people would be comfortable for hours at 55 dropping to 51 degrees.
No, even for my friends who like to keep their house cold, I think that would be a little cold for them.
Yeah. They did ask no longer Officer McVeigh, if he felt cold outside because they brought them in 30 minutes after they went out to the patio because it was too cold. Mm-hmm. Right? So well, that does say something.
Right.
This is the same person. Like, they're too cold out there after 30 minutes, but they weren't cold after 3 hours. That doesn't seem likely. Mm-hmm. And he didn't feel like it was particularly cold, but I don't know what he was wearing. Did he have his jacket on?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. The only thing that we have with that testimony is just to weigh, do we think the story makes sense that he was sitting out there for that long in the middle of winter? Mm-hmm. I don't know. We move on to the medical examiner. This was a little bit interesting. A medical examiner does not have to be an MD. The forensic pathologist is an MD, and the MD pathologist is the one who performs the autopsy, but the medical examiner is the one who goes out to the scene initially, does the assessment on scene, observes some of the autopsy, takes the autopsy results, and combines that with the findings of the investigation and makes that determination on the means and manner of death. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if they're going to have the forensic pathologist that actually performed the autopsy come and testify. I hope they do, because he wasn't present even for all of the autopsies. But he says when he went out to the scene, he saw 2 lacerations on Kathleen's scalp that joined together in a V shape, which left a flap of skin free, and he felt like it could be consistent with a fall, but he needed to further examine her to see if there were other injuries. He said that there was just too much blood and hair to be able to fully assess her head on scene. Mm-hmm. He did tell people on scene to look for a weapon that could have caused injuries, and he specifically mentioned a crowbar or a fire poker, since those are consistent with the injuries per the literature. So he's not the only one who had that thought when he observed her on scene and with the injuries that he saw. So he observed part of the autopsy, the external examination of Kathleen's body, and the opening of the skull. So he says the injuries noted to Kathleen's body were as follows. There was bruising and abrasions, which would be like scrapes, to her face, predominantly on the left side. So I'm trying to picture her walking up the stairs, slipping. The chair would be on her left side if she's walking upstairs. So could she have slipped? Could she have hit her face or her head on that chair lift? There's bruising on both of her hands and her arms. Her hands, I think it said predominantly on the left side. There was an injury to her left shoulder blade, 7 lacerations as they counted them, multiple of those being parallel to one another. And then there was one going across the upper part of the scalp and one going across the base of the scalp. So there was a fair amount of bruising where the lacerations were which that makes sense. I mean, bleeding into the tissues around the wounds and bleeding out of the tissues around the wounds. So they reviewed his report of what he wrote up, and he does say, okay, as he's at the scene, he's inputting information gathered by what the first responders are saying and all of that, which of course it was reported and initially opened as an accident. So he had noted some of those things. And some of the information that's jotted down may or may not be accurate because they're just putting down what they've been told, right? Fell out of wheelchair. If you put that down, he could have been told that. And then they would say, oh, well, actually, she didn't fall out of a wheelchair. There was no wheelchair, right? So then you continue gathering information and then you finalize the report. So that's a normal process that he would go through. When the defense got up to question the medical examiner, he brings up that this medical examiner has only investigated 2 falls prior to this case.
Okay.
He says he's done an additional investigation into a fall case since this case occurred, and he is using information from textbooks to base his conclusions on. And one of those textbooks was written by none other than Dr. Spitz. Dr. Spitz, who was the expert witness in the Casey Anthony trial.
That's right.
And he might
that
be,
sounds familiar.
He might be older than Mr. Haggard that testified first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this was the same year, wasn't it? 2001 that Casey Anthony went on trial too?
I believe so.
Well, 2001 is when Kathleen died.
So 2003.
2003 is when the trial took place, but it would have been in that same era.
And was this the one that testified for the state or for the defense?
In the Anthony trial? For the defense, who said that like taping the mandible onto the skull so that it stayed in place, and then he was just, bizarre.
Kind of some weird stuff. Very contrary to what the state's expert witnesses had to say about it, so.
Yeah, definitely. The defense attorney informs Dr. Snell, who's on the stand, that Dr. Spitz is actually going to come and testify as an expert for the defense in this case.
Oh my gosh,
yes,
really?
Yeah. I haven't heard him testify yet, so I'm excited to hear what he has to say if he does indeed take the stand.
He was popping early 2000s.
Yeah, he was. I think he was 95.
Yeah. You know, if you got to peak sometime. If you peaked in his 90s, well...
That's what was keeping him going, you know. But the ME says, well, I'd be really surprised if Dr. Spitz has a different opinion, because it would go counter to everything that he says in his textbooks about these types of injuries. So a week prior to him taking the stand, he told the defense attorney that he was 75% sure it was an assault. And now he's more sure because the defense said, well, maybe you should go do some more reading and studying about this. And so he did. And he said, well, all of the stuff that I'm reading is confirming my conclusion that I came to. So I feel strongly convinced that this was an assault and not an accidental fall. So the defense shows Dr. Snell Dr. Spitz's written opinion, and we don't hear what his written opinion is, but he reads through it and he says, I don't know what information Spitz would have used to come to his conclusion. Well, I can tell you what he probably used. What the defense wanted him to say. That's probably what he used.
Right.
Oh, wait, let's have the conclusion first, and then let's find a way to work ourselves to that conclusion instead of coming at it the other direction.
Yeah, some selective information maybe.
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting. Dr. Snell says that it's possible that each individual wound could have been caused by her head striking a rounded object. So it can't be sharp because it is a splitting of the skin, not a cutting of the skin. But he says the problem, if it was a fall, she would have had to strike the corner of the steps or whatever multiple times in the same plane. You know, let's say we're bang your head, and then you have to keep the angle of your head exactly the same and hit it somewhere else, and then exactly the same, hit it somewhere else. And he just said that just doesn't seem plausible. In a newspaper article shown to the witness by the defense, it mentions that there were 4 lacerations rather than 7. And that in that article, Dr. Snell is quoted as saying that though some of the lacerations were consistent with a fall, there were other injuries that required further explanation. To me, I'm like, well, I mean, that seems to just support the state, not the defense. You know, that if that early he was saying, there's some questions here, some things that don't seem to be explained by a simple fall or even 2 simple falls.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm interested to see if the actual forensic pathologist gets up and details those injuries in further detail and helps me to understand all the conclusions that are being drawn. But there were lots of wounds there of split skin going multiple directions and all over the back of her head. Hard for me to imagine how all of that would have occurred. And hopefully Dr. Spitz is going to enlighten me as to all of these special incidences that would lead to that result.
Oh, I'm sure he will.
Yeah, and let's see if I find him more credible this time around than I did in the Casey Anthony trial. That's still kind of a question mark, and I am really interested to hear what other experts have to say about it to help me come to my final conclusion about things. We're going to now pivot away from the medical side of things for a minute and get into computer information that was gathered during the investigation. So if you recall last episode where the police officer testified that they saw Michael on the computer at some point, Michael, or was it Todd? I don't know. One of the 2 of them. So they did look through the computers. They might have chosen to do that anyway, just to get some information. So the first guy just talks about how computer space works and did use like Michael Peterson's hard drive size equals the content of 700 boxes of paper. I'm curious what it would be today. I mean, that sounds like a lot, but it's been 25 years. I'm guessing the amount of storage space on a computer is much greater nowadays.
I'm sure, and I don't think we'd even quantify them in boxes of paper.
Right. Yeah. Computers are so new. We can't conceive of how, like how much information is really on there.
I don't know if I've ever seen a box of paper.
Right. Yeah. So then we have a computer expert. He's a forensic computer expert who comes and he did a lot of the searching of the computer. There was a question of if the information had all been downloaded from Michael Peterson's computer, files removed and changed, and then that backup being reloaded onto the computer, changing everything that was on there. Because everything showed the same date of access. Yeah, I mean, it looked suspicious to them, but it does appear that that was not the case. I think they determined that actually during the trial, because I think during opening statements there was still an accusation or that looked suspicious for Michael Peterson. But some of the things that they did find on there were some emails. So there was an email from Michael to Tom, Kathleen's ex, talking about the layoffs at Nortel, that 45,000 people were fired. That's a huge layoff. And he stated that Kathleen was currently safe, but it's been stressful. So that does support this picture that the state is presenting of there being concern about the safety of Kathleen's job, their potential income, and whether she might get laid off. There's a email between Michael and his ex-wife discussing the income from these rental properties that they owned. So all of these properties were not owned independently by Michael and Kathleen. A lot of those the boys were also investing into. But in this email to his ex-wife, he states that the rental property was bringing in less than what Todd owed on the property. So he was asking her for $30,000 to help refinance that mortgage so that the boys, that would help them out. It would lower the payment that was owed, and maybe they would not be losing money on the property every month. So the defense, back when the financial guy was on the stand, he was saying, look, they've got all these properties, they've got all this money. But now we hear this and say, well, he's saying directly to someone about one of the properties that the boys are involved in, hey, we're losing money on this and it's hurting the boys. So he stated he's worried sick about the boys and can't talk to Kathleen about it. So interesting. There's another email from Michael Peterson to Caitlin's dad, Tom, giving an amount for Caitlin's schooling, $33,160, not including living expenses for school fees and not including travel. And Michael was asking Tom for $5,000 per semester. And in that, he states, sorry as hell to have to come begging. Well, he's stating himself. He's, talking about the fact that they are having some financial concerns.
Definitely.
There was an email from Michael to Kathleen that the state characterizes as Michael requesting that he and Kathleen work on their marriage. Another email about Michael and infidelity, and an email sent to Michael Peterson from Dirk Yates, and this would have been in February of 2001. And Dirk Yates runs a web service that deals primarily in homosexual pornography. They said that they recovered a large volume of pictures, and the majority of the pictures are as a result of web browsing and ended up in the web browser cache. About 2,000 were in that unallocated space that had been deleted by Michael but hadn't actually been overwritten by the system yet.
Right.
And my understanding is the bulk of those were homosexual in nature as well.
Right.
There was a list of websites that were visited more than 20 times, and large number of those websites were of a sexual nature, though the most visited was the New York Times. Yeah.
Hey, New York Times, very sexy.
Yeah. Yeah. So the state is, well, they preempt the defense's questioning by bringing up that there were no manuscripts found on Michael's computer related to homosexual activity. They did note that there was a virus of how do you say McAfee?
I know what you're talking about.
MCAFEE virus scan program that was scheduled to run automatically on 12/10, so that would have been the day after Kathleen's death, and 20,855 files were accessed that day, which they did later come to understand that the virus program changed the access date on all of those files that it was scanning, and so it changed them all to be 12/10. So
interesting. Yeah, that is really ironic timing, like the coincidence of that. The day after all of this happens and a bunch of stuff gets accessed and deleted, but it was just routine.
Right. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, was it routine or was it,
right.
Probably...
But are you going to trust if you're hiding things,
right.
You're like, well, I hope this virus detector thing gets all the bad stuff out that I don't want anybody to know. Like, You're going to go in there and individually delete things, not trust an otherwise totally innocuous computer system.
Right. And would you really trust that they're not going to seize your computer before it has a chance to run? If you're going to do it, you're probably going to do it before that. So, well, actually, Quick Clean had been run on 12/8, so the day before Kathleen's death, I believe, triggered by a user, not just set up. And then on 12/10, which was the day after her death, that virus scan went on. So that Quick Clean would delete temporary files, cookies, possibly registry of web addresses, old emails, things like that. And so that log file didn't show how many emails were actually deleted. So maybe he did some cleanup on 12/8 before Kathleen's death. That's a possibility. The big red herring was the virus scan program that did change the access date on all of these files, which was confusing, especially because McAfee, they denied that their virus scanner would change access dates on those files. And it wasn't until they ran a simulation and they showed that, yes, it actually does affect the access dates on the files, and an SBI agent or something had figured that out sometime as the trial was being presented. So
yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's I would be curious to see how often he did these quick clean things, and was it the first time? That would be interesting information to know, because again, looks really bad. It could be definitely intentional, or it could just be really bad timing,
Right.
If it was an accident, you're just living your life, not paying attention to things like that. But if it was not an accident, that's
right.
Opportune timing.
Yeah, or inopportune, because it makes you look guilty if you're innocent. So you could go either way.
True.
Right? So they recovered approximately 16,000 emails and had 4 different people independently looking through all of those, trying to find anything that might be relevant to the case. The defense brings out there were no emails that were speaking negatively about Kathleen that they found. There was one email that contained a sarcastic comment related to Kathleen cleaning up the house and misplacing a political document, but nothing related to any arguments or anything like that. This was interesting. The defense claims, well, there's emails regarding money, but none that expressed concern about their income.
Which obviously not true.
Yeah, I'm like, well, I mean, they've got the one about the rental property and that, and it's not income specifically.
Well, the Nortel one kind of is.
It is, right. I mean, it is concerning a fear that they could lose income, but he doesn't directly say it. I don't know. That to me seems like a trying to skirt around an issue type of thing by the defense, which not surprising, but
right.
And there were even a few emails where seems like Michael is bragging to people about their resources, their house, and trying to puff things up about how awesome they're doing. Mm-hmm. So the defense says, well, I mean, there's evidence that Michael was bisexual, and he was visiting websites where homosexual activity was depicted. You can't say that Kathleen didn't know about that. She might have known that he's bisexual and he's looking at stuff like that, which is true. Who knows? We don't know what she may have known about his sexual proclivities. But the email that the state brought up about maybe we should work on our marriage tonight, I think it was a little misleading on the side of the state, because the email was talking about some event that they were going to, and Michael saying, "Ooh, you looked really good when we went out. Maybe we should, quote, work on our marriage tonight," which could be a euphemism for maybe we should have sex tonight,
Right, yeah.
So it didn't seem like in the context that it was really about we probably should work on our marriage. It was probably a more sarcastic or funny type of statement,
right.
Not really a serious, we have marriage troubles, we should probably work on our marriage tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's never a good route to go for me. Don't try and make it sound like something different than it is. Just play it straight, and you're going to go much better as far as I'm concerned.
Right, and they have enough motive, I think, as far as with what they have, the financial motive. And I think most people wouldn't want their pornography habits discovered, but I could definitely see how if it was unknown to her that he may also like men, that could be a big discovery.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that could cause some trouble in the marriage for sure. Mm-hmm. But the defense's position is that Michael, which I'm like, pick your position. I don't know, because the defense is saying, well, I mean, he was bisexual, so he looked at homosexual pornography. Mm-hmm. But then they're also saying, Well, he was working on a book, an article, something, I think they're saying a book, related to gays in the military. And he was just doing research.
Okay.
And I guess this Dirk Yates that had sent the email, some of his content was military and ex-military individuals in the pornography that was being depicted.
Mm-hmm.
So it was research about gays in the military.
That just sounds like a good cover story when it's for if somebody walks in on him. Hey, it's research. Okay, I'm not enjoying this at all.
Yeah.
It is hard work.
Yeah, right. So the defense says, well, he may have visited these sites multiple times, 20 plus times, but his most visited sites, other than New York Times, were eBay, Amazon, Netscape. So there were plenty of things that were on there. Oh, and there were other users, 9 West, Cornell. Those might have been someone else looking at them. How do we know he was the one that was looking up gay pornography? Well, was it Kathleen? Was it her teenage daughter now just leaving for college? Unlikely.
Yeah.
But apparently they also discovered some emails between Michael and our mystery witness that is going to be taking the stand next.
Ooh.
So hold on for that.
To me, the idea that Kathleen was aware of his pornography habits seems a little bit convenient. It's possible she was aware at least of his sexuality, if not what he was watching. But
Sure. Yeah. Like I said, where it gets sketchy to me is when you have all sorts of reasoning for it. It's like, pick a story and stick with it. Is it him looking at it and she knows? Is it him looking at it because he's doing research? Is it him because he's bisexual and he's interested and it's sparked this interest in researching a book on gays in the military, but trying to...
Which then sparked interest in other people in the home who also watched.
Right. They were the ones looking it up. I'm like, pick your story and stick with it. When you go too many directions that, oh, well, this covers it under these one conditions, but then it doesn't cover it under this. And so then you pick something else. And so then you pick something else. But they don't all make sense together. If you're looking at all of the excuses that they're coming up with, they don't all work at the same time.
Yep.
So just pick the one that's actually true and talk about that one. Talk about that,
That would be nice, yeah.
I know, it's novel. Maybe defense attorneys have never been told that before.
Yeah, too much to ask.
This is what I would recommend. Pick the truth and then say it. Yeah.
Or at least pick one thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if it's not going to be the truth, pick, the most plausible thing and stick with that.
Right.
Okay. All right. So any guesses from you what this mystery witness is going to be?
I don't. Is he a porn star? Just kidding. I don't know.
Well, and maybe once I say it, you'll go, oh, okay, yeah, I knew about that. But so this mystery witness is a former male escort.
Okay, I was on the right track.
Yeah, you were. Is this a more extreme version of what you might have thought? Because...
Well, I guess it makes more sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. Somebody who does adult films probably would have no direct interaction, so...
Right. Yeah. So this witness, and I'm going to not share his name because he didn't really want to testify. And... felt like this was a risk to himself, not necessarily a risk to his life, but could do significant damage to his life, which I respect. So he was a member of the military, and for a time he worked as a male escort to help pay for his education. So... he was part of a male escort service that people could look at different escorts and they could reach out and have a little bit of an exchange back and forth and see if they felt like it was a good fit to get together.
He was in the military at the time when he was an escort.
Yes.
Yeah, I could see why. I mean, just that alone, if he was still in the military at the time of testifying, would be a reason to not want to testify, because I think then they probably still had the whole, like, don't ask, don't tell policy.
And even if he was out of the military, I mean, just being an escort is not illegal, but this was not truly just an escort service. This was with the intention of having intercourse with their clients. Right. So,
yeah, I never really understood the real difference there.
I think truly an escort is supposed to be a paid date, that they go with you. And is it ever really just that? I don't know. Supposedly that is what an escort is supposed to be.
Or is it a front for prostitution?
Exactly. And in this case, the answer to that question is yes, it was.
Right.
So
people with money do weird things, I guess, or lonely people do weird things, so.
Right. Michael Peterson originally contacted this male escort in August of 2001. So that was only a few months before Kathleen's death.
Mm-hmm.
They had about 20 email exchanges back and forth between the two of them. They spoke on the phone 2 different times, one at the end of August and the other the first week of September. The escort sent Michael a photograph to show him, quote, what he was getting, and they agreed upon a rate of $150 an hour. There was an email from Michael where he does mention his wife and says he has a wonderful wife and a lot of love and affection for her, but he doesn't remember whether Michael mentioned if his wife was aware of their hookup or not.
Well, I mean, I don't know, the way that the defense has been portraying it, or one of the ways they have been portraying it, is that, well, she was aware of his sexuality and the pornographic content he was consuming was the way to fill that need without cheating on his wife. But then This kind of goes into, yeah, but it wasn't just that. It at least started to go a step farther than that.
Right.
And was she aware of that as well?
Right. Yeah, definitely. So there was an arrangement made for Michael to meet up with this male escort. They planned to meet at one of Michael Peterson's rental properties, and the plan was for a full sexual encounter. But the escort ended up not going.
Oh.
Part of the plan was, okay, well, I'm going to be in the area. I'm going to be passing through this time frame. And they arranged this meetup coordinating with his trip. But then when he actually got in, he was like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I just, so he ended up just not showing up. And he didn't let Michael know either. He just didn't go.
Oh, okay.
25 days later, he contacted Michael to apologize for not showing up, and he never heard anything back from Michael.
All right.
Yeah.
And so before that point, they hadn't met up before they had?
No, they hadn't met in person. And one of the reasons that the escort said he remembered these interactions is because the email address used was MP Writer. He thought MP might mean military police, and so he was a little bit cautious, like, oh, okay, is this, am I going to get in trouble? Here's someone trying to set me up.
Oh my gosh. It's just, it would be weird to be trying to catch people in something, but have your username be like military police, or emailing back and forth with to catch a predator at gmail.com. Like,
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. Seems suspicious to me.
Yeah. Well, and he was using his primary email address. Michael was. That's what he used for his email exchanges pretty much exclusively. So he didn't make up some fake email. So that says he wasn't necessarily trying to hide it. I'm not sure if those email exchanges were some of the emails that had been deleted, but were not actually deleted from the computer, but were attempted to be deleted. But it is very close to the time that Kathleen died, so later in September. So 2.5-ish months before Kathleen's death, he had planned to meet up with this male escort. So, you could ask yourself, is he looking to go outside of the relationship? Is he dissatisfied with the relationship that he has? I don't know. I mean, there is a bit of question of how important is this to the case. You have to weigh out how much of this might go to motive versus how much is just trying to cast him in some sort of negative light.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the part of it being him being bisexual and it being things to do with men, like that aspect of it could be seen more as a smear campaign kind of thing, especially like at that time. Even now I could see somebody kind of doing that. But if it were with a woman escort, I think it would still be important to be aware of. I don't know how much focus should be put on it either way, because it only really matters if she knew, I guess. Maybe not. I don't know. I guess you could go two ways with that. It's like she found out and so then he killed her, or he was interested in getting out of the marriage and so he killed her, and that might be a sign of that. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. I mean, if we're saying, okay, could this be she found out? Actually, that does bring a possibility to mind. So when she spoke to her coworker at 11-ish at night, her coworker was sending her an email pertaining to their work meeting the next day. She sounded fine at the time that she spoke with her coworker. Nothing seemed wrong, and she also seemed fine earlier that day when she talked to a different coworker at her office. Could she have gotten on the computer to get that email and seen something on Michael's email instead and confronted him, and then this argument ensues, which ends in her death? That's a possibility.
Definitely.
They say that she never opened that PowerPoint presentation. Is it something that she would have tried to look at that night? Because they had a meeting pretty early the next morning. If it would have been something that she would likely open that night, it's possible that she did see something and something happened. But that would be the time frame that I can see that as a possibility. And would it lead to such an upset that it would cause big physical altercation and her death? Maybe. I don't know. Definitely a question. So the defense, when they get up to question the witness, I might have to put a clip of this little exchange that happens. He tells the defense attorney that the majority of his clients were married men.
With regard to the kinds of men that you tended to have escort relationships with, can you give us some indication of their professions, for example?
Sure. Usually they are professionals because my fees were quite high. I saw doctors, attorneys, one judge.
It was not this judge.
I think we can stipulate to that.
The witness believed that most of the men's wives knew that their husbands were bisexual and stated that most would have their time with me and then go back to their happy, healthy lives. He never had any romantic relationships with any of the men that he saw. There were other instances where he would interact with men via email or phone and never actually get to a physical encounter. But I have to say, in this case, the only reason they didn't get to the physical encounter was because he didn't show, not because Michael didn't show.
Yeah, it's interesting. It actually makes me think a little bit about the case that we just got off of, which was Corey Richins, and how like the two kind of things that they're showing for motive are somewhat similar. And I guess they probably would be the same things you would think of in most cases like this. It's the money and if there's extramarital affair going on. But it's interesting because they're similar but also so different.
I mean, the other one was definitely a relationship. This was not a relationship. This was an exploration of sexuality. Now, what does that say? Was he interested in switching his relationship to someone else? Was he coming to terms with, hey, actually, I think I like guys and I want to try this out? And, I don't know. I mean, I doubt before you tried it out that you would be killing your wife to get some money. And then if there's no real indicator that he's in a relationship with somebody, that weakens that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, as far as the motive of him killing her to be with somebody else, because, I mean, him and this guy didn't talk around that time at all anymore. It's interesting, and I wish there was a way to prove whether she knew or not, whether something had been accessed or not on that computer that night. Because it was months prior, it seems interesting that she would happen upon something that wasn't currently going on.
It's hard to say, but, if he was on his computer,
right.
If he had been on the computer and it was up, I don't know why that would be a visible email to her. It doesn't seem like it would be at the top of the list.
For me, in this case, at least, like, the motive part is not super strong.
Right.
It all comes down to the evidence, I think. This could be, or this maybe she didn't even know and she never knew, or maybe she was aware the whole time, or there's just so much that it's hard to say.
So much unknown.
Yeah, and way less compelling than some other motives that we've heard put out in the past.
In other cases.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I agree. If he was in a relationship that they could show, that's different than the fact that he was trying to initiate an encounter with somebody. That is a different type of situation. So unless it was discovered that night, she freaks out, she starts making threats, things are said, who knows? I mean, that is a possibility, but you also need to say, well, are there things to support that? But the evidence has to fit too, but we may never know if she saw that or not. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The defense does bring out some support for Michael not trying to hide this interaction. He's using his regular email address. The phone calls that were made between Michael and the escort were made on a phone that was registered in Kathleen's name. And he had stated explicitly that he had a good relationship with his wife. So there's nothing else that we know, and we don't know whether Kathleen was aware of his bisexuality.
Mm-hmm.
So that's still a question mark. But this witness tried very hard to not testify, understandably. After learning he was going to be called as a witness, he reached out to the defense saying, hey, is there anything that you can do to keep me from testifying? And the defense prepared a written affidavit that they submitted to the district attorney, trying to get him out of testifying because he's like, I don't know him. I never met him. We didn't have any relations with each other. Yes, we had this exchange, but I don't really have any information that is additive to this case, in his opinion. Mm-hmm. But the district attorney never responded to that, and here he sits on the witness stand. So didn't work.
Yeah, it's interesting, like the idea that you can be forced to testify.
Yeah. I guess the judge must have decided that it had enough merit to put him on the stand. So I don't know. Okay, so we're going to leave that witness and we're going to move to our final area of evidence or testimony today, which is about the blood evidence, the blood spatter evidence, I should say, more specifically. So we actually had a brief witness before our blood spatter expert from the State Bureau of Investigation. He works in trace evidence and fibers. And he looked at Michael's shorts. And the main thing that he was looking at, there was a lot of blood on the shorts. He was focused on the inside of the shorts near the bottom of the right leg. And there were spots of blood that originated from the inside of the shorts.
Mm-hmm.
So the majority of the blood on the front that was covering the whole crotch area and extending onto the legs, it appeared kind of watered down. And, you know, like when you put water on a stain and then it kind of seeps out further into the fabric. That's what the majority of the blood looked like on the front of Michael's shorts. But there were 8 spots on his shorts that indicate the blood hit the inside of the leg of his shorts first.
Huh.
So that does raise some significant questions in my mind. They showed the shorts, they showed microscopic magnification of those areas, and it is clear that the blood did hit that inside of the shorts. And we're talking like 6 or 7 inches up from the hem. So it's not like it was just barely inside the leg of the shorts. It was pretty far up there.
How could that happen?
Exactly.
I don't even know how that could happen if he's beating her over the head. I don't really.
Well, if you're standing over somebody, she's laying on the stairs, and you are hitting her, and her head is below the level of your shorts, right? Then blood spattering upwards from the impact could splash inside the leg of the shorts.
Gotcha. I was thinking more of like cast off, and I was like, well, that doesn't really make sense. But okay. Yeah.
So more impact spatter that's coming up from the point of impact. And 8 spots, that's pretty significant. And 2 of those spots, the blood didn't make it all the way through to the outside of the shorts. So there's zero question that those hit the inside first. And the other ones, because the stain on the inside of the shorts was larger than the stain that made it through to the outside, that also indicates that the blood hit the inside, and as it seeped through, only part of it made it all the way through the front of the shorts. So
yeah, okay.
So, yeah, I just don't know how anything that Michael did in the scenario that he presented with finding Kathleen on the stairs would explain blood splashing up into the leg of his shorts. I just can't see a scenario where that happens.
Yeah, that doesn't look good at all.
So unless their expert can make a reasonable explanation for that, that leaves some pretty big question marks for me. Now, the blood pattern analysis guy from the State Bureau of Investigations, the defense questioned him for a long time about his training, what associations he was a part of, blah, blah, blah. Interesting that he was not certified as an expert by the judge.
The blood spatter guy?
Yeah. So, yeah, they said, well, we're going to leave it to the jury to determine what weight to give to his testimony. That does weaken his position quite a bit.
For sure.
Yeah. So, as part of his investigation, he builds a scale replica of the staircase, and he runs simulations inside the staircase. So, on the night that he was called out, he did a process called stringing, where you identify certain blood spatter drops and you use what the calculations that they have that determine what angle it hit the wall, right? So then you follow through with a string forward out into space, and you take another dot. In this case, the 2 walls that met at the corner, he took spots from both walls and found out, like, okay, where do they come together? Where do they meet out in space? There were a number of different instances where that point of convergence was multiple feet off of the ground. Her head was not on the floor to make those splashes. It had to have been up higher, like she was on her hands and knees, say, and that something hit her head while her head was higher up in space, and the blood spattered from that point. So we have one that was 1.5 to 2 feet up from the height of the stair. So it's pretty far up. And then we have another one that is 11 inches up from the stair. And they're also a significant distance away from the wall, say 6 to 8 inches. So it is definitely out in space. This is not something that occurred from her hitting into the wall or from her hitting a stair or from her hitting her head on the ground. It was out in space.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's cool that they can determine that.
Yeah, so I would say there are 3 distinctive instances where it was shown that the spatter originated from somewhere distinctively away from the floor and the wall. There were blood transfer marks that he identified on the steps that had sharp edges, which is another reason that they're thinking some sort of object was involved, because what else would make sharp edges in blood on the stairs? And there were also instances of smearing of blood by something with blood on it. My question, was it her hair? Could that have smeared blood? But there is smearing and then additional impact spatter on top of the smears. So that does say, okay, probably interaction, well, definitely interaction that's going on during the incident. So her shirt brushing against the wall after there's blood already on there, her arm, something else, and then, or she goes down, like the defense says, she's laying there, he's trying to clean stuff up, and then, oh, she's not dead yet, and he hits her some more, and more spatter goes on top of the smeared blood. I mean, those are the,
Right.
possible instances. Either she smeared it, or he tried to clean up and smeared it, but then there was impact that occurred after the smearing. There was definitely a void space on the wall that we talked about before that had some dripping down the wall. That does seem to indicate that a liquid that was not blood was applied to the wall, resulting in dripping down the wall. Was that luminol, or was that a cleaner that was used by Michael? And then we have the step itself, that blood is being cleaned off the step, which does seem strange. Why? I mean, a lot of those impacts did appear to be over that kite-shaped stair, and that one was cleaned off, and then you have a lot more blood on the stairs where she's draining blood from the back of her head. So it is kind of weird. Why would you bother to wipe up any blood from that stair? I don't know. The one question that I have, though, is how do you only end up with one instance of cast-off inside the stairwell? If you're beating somebody with something, do you really not have cast-off inside the stairwell? That seems strange. Okay, so when he was doing these recreations inside the stairs, he's using, say, a poker or something and hitting a mannequin head with a wig on it that has been saturated with blood. He's whacking that to see what spatter patterns does that produce on the walls, and is it similar to what they saw in the stairwell? And it did seem that he was able to recreate that. However, the arc of the swing was very short, right? So say you're standing and you're hitting something, but you only lift the poker, say 5 inches, and you're like, whack, 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 like that, but you're not actually swinging it like you would to really gain momentum. Is that the way you would hit someone if you were trying to beat them? That seems kind of strange. Like, oh, boop, boop, not, I don't know.
Looking away, covering your eyes.
Yeah, exactly. Ow, ooh, ow.
Yeah,
so it doesn't seem like it's also an enclosed space, so maybe you are more controlled with your swing because you don't have a lot of swinging area.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, well, could you even get enough force to make those wounds only 5 inches off of her head?
Yeah, it's hard to know because obviously a mannequin head, you can't necessarily reproduce the wounds themselves. He's focused on what does the spatter look like, but I don't know. And there was a funny part when the defense is questioning him. Sorry.
Oh, no.
I might have to put this in there. So they have video that they're showing the testing that he's doing, and the defense attorney is like, well, you weren't swinging with that much force, you're kind of like we were talking about. And the witness says,
being a person who teaches defensive tactics, a controlled swing will give you substantial force. That's the basis of a lot of martial arts. I dare say no one would want me to do that to them and to see if it hurts or creates injury or death.
Well, we can probably stipulate that.
oh, I was swinging with quite a bit of force. I practice martial arts, so I'm pretty strong.
Oh my gosh. It's harder than it looks. Like Napoleon Dynamite going to his Taekwondo class
Right,
or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I don't. And those are the kids. Those are always the kids who are like, I know karate. You're like,
Right.
Okay, sure.
Right.
Yeah. That is interesting. And also I think about so the blowpoke is round, right? Because it's like a tube.
Yeah.
And because they're talking about how the skin split, it wasn't cut, so it couldn't be sharp.
Right.
But I'm imagining if I got hit on the head with a dowel rod or something like that, that probably wouldn't make me bleed.
Right. I mean, if you get hit with enough force, it causes the skin to just split apart in that area, which, I mean, that's pretty classic. That does make sense that this could cause that type of damage.
Right. But at 5 inches off of her head?
Right. I don't know. There are some real questions when it comes to what implement would have been used and that would not have created any sort of cast off, but would have been hitting her out in space somewhere and would have been causing spatter. So I don't know, but he also did tests to see about if I stomp in blood, what kind of spatter is produced. When he was stomping in blood, the highest that he ever got blood to travel from the floor was 5 inches. The blood that was on the wall was way higher than that. So you couldn't say okay, well, I was just stomping around and it caused blood to spatter that high up on the wall. It doesn't fit. Even Michael running up the stairs and running through a pool of blood, which then we would expect to see bloody shoe prints up the stairs, which we don't see. And then it's also the question of, okay, could that have created the spatter inside his short leg that he splashed into some blood and it spattered up inside his shorts? Well, it seems that that's a no as well. And there was also some drops of blood that hit onto the top of Michael's shoes that were sitting on the floor near Kathleen's body. In these stomp tests that he was doing, no spatter landed on the top of the shoes. So does seem like it dripped onto the shoes rather than spattering onto the shoes. And he was able to recreate a scenario where blood did splash into the leg of similar shorts that he was wearing, and that was having his left leg standing on one stair and his right leg is up standing on the stair above it. So his leg is kind of cocked.
It's a weird image. I don't know. I'll have to go onto my own staircase and be like,
right.
Does that seem like something you would do? I don't know. I'd have to see that.
I mean, it does make sense if something is in the corner, basically, of the stairs, and you're trying to get an angle on that. Actually does kind of make sense that you're positioning yourself at a diagonal towards the corner of the landing, and so there's not a lot of space there, because that's where the bottom point of the kite is, of the landing step. So that does make sense to me. It doesn't seem like a leap.
Yeah, okay.
The defense, though, in at least one of the witness testimony, they showed some pictures of what looks like fireplace implements laying on the hearth, and this picture had been taken prior to the day of the incident. So when the defense says, well, to have something mysteriously missing, you have to show that it was actually present around that time. So they show a picture from Thanksgiving of 2000, but that's still like over a year before.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a picture from the crime scene, which the defense brings out, and it does seem like they were two canes, not the blow poke and not a fireplace poker. That does make me wonder, though, well, could it be a cane? Because that would produce splitting if you hit someone's head with it, too. And it was weird that the witness appeared to be resisting saying that, oh, yeah, those two items, that does look like that was the things in the picture. Why, maybe, I don't know. I guess if they had well, we know that those don't have any blood on them. So then that picture doesn't actually mean anything because here they are. And it did seem to undermine the idea that this was the fireplace poker or the blow poke in question and it was there. It does seem like it was the canes and not the fireplace poker, the blow poke in question.
Okay. Yeah.
So they still haven't proved that the blow poke was present before or near the time of the incident, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it just has to be something like it, I guess. But besides the missing blow poke, things are looking not super promising as far as the defense. I mean, what's the innocent explanation of getting the blood where it was and how it was there?
Yeah, I'm left with a lot of questions about how the evidence fits with him killing her, but there is definitely evidence that is unexplainable except for him beating her, in my opinion. So it does go both ways. I feel like there's some that I'm like, would it really only be this? Wouldn't I be seeing that? And then there's well, but there is this, and how could you explain that other than him doing this? And so I'm really pulled two different directions at this point in the case.
Well, it seems like it should be consistent, right? If he hit her, then both things should make sense with that.
Right. Or he really did have short swings, because the short swings that the blood spatter expert was using in the stairwell did create spatter that was very similar to what you saw on the scene. So,
and the cast off as well?
Well, lack of.
Oh, but the 10-foot high cast off?
Well, you could say, yeah, if you swing once high, then you only need one swing high to have that cast off, right? And the defense did call into question, well, did you try swinging that implement from the doorway or inside the stairwell and trying to get that spatter on the wall that's outside of the stairwell? Is there enough room to swing something like that and cast off blood way up there? He didn't ever do that, so that is still kind of an open question. But I mean, that's the only way that I would say you could explain the blood that landed that far up on the wall inside this stairwell. So
it would be a weird place to decide to kill somebody.
Yeah, it is weird. So we go from the blood spatter expert into the next portion of the case, which we're going to cover in our next episode, which is an incident that occurred 18 years prior where a family friend, the mother of the two girls that were adopted by Michael Peterson and his wife Patty, died on a staircase. And they're going to present details surrounding that incident. And we have to decide, do we think this was inspiration for how this crime went down if he killed her, right? That maybe we can make this look like an accident too, and can I kind of create the same effect of the blood and stuff that happened when his friend died? So I think that's a valid question to ask. That would definitely point to significant planning ahead, not a heat of the moment. You saw my email and now we're in a fight, and we're fighting as we're going up the stairs. I push you, you fall down, and then
I have the blowpoke for some reason.
Yeah, and then I run and go get the blowpoke, and then it's just...
And then I come back up the stairs and turn around, and then...
Right, so it would have to be something that was thought out and intentional for that scenario. Like, at least, that it wasn't just like a heat of the moment. Now, could it have been something that he'd imagined and planned out? And then we have a heat of the moment situation where he says, okay, this is it. I'm following through on this plan. Maybe, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So the defense questions the way he did his analysis of the blood spatter, saying, well, you hit this mannequin head 43 times or something like that. And you only produce this minimal amount of blood to spatter on the walls, and maybe it looks similar to what was on the walls there, but there's not enough wounds to indicate that Michael Peterson hit Kathleen 43 plus times, and there was more blood there. And I mean, to me, I also see that, well, a mannequin is not actively bleeding, right? It's only the amount of blood that you apply to it, so I don't think that that's a fair comparison. And the point of using the mannequin is really just saying, well, what's the pattern that is produced when I hit at this point, and does it look like what we saw in the stairwell? It's not saying, let me see what I can do, and if I can create the same amount of blood in the same exact, whatever. That's not really the point of it. And so I think a lot of the questions that the defense was presenting to the witness, to me, thought this is an experiment and it has a certain purpose, and that it's not expected that it's going to look exactly the same, and that wasn't the goal, right?
While they're doing experiments, I just would be so curious to see like how much force it would require to create those wounds with a rounded object like that, because...
Yeah, that is a good question. It would be interesting. And the thing is, you also have to recognize there were no skull fractures. So it had to have been hard enough that it would cause the skin to split, but not so hard that it shatters or cracks the skull. So it's somewhere in between those. So that does argue for not a full golf swing. It is a pretty confusing picture, and it's just hard to understand how it could have happened. There's just a lot of unanswered questions at this point. So I don't know. And if there isn't more clarity, then how do you not go with not guilty? But it also is like, well, if it's not explainable by a fall down the stairs, then somebody had to be involved. And so then that says, well, even if I don't understand exactly how it happened, I believe it had to have happened because there's no way that this happened just from her falling. So, I'm so undecided right now based on the information that I have. I really just don't know which direction I'm going to land. The defense was suggesting that the dilution of blood on the shorts could have been caused by sweat.
Okay.
I'm like, I see where you're going here. That would be a lot of sweat and crotch sweat. That's like a lot of crotch sweat. And but the witness says that the condition of the pockets of the shorts support his conclusion that it was not related to sweat soaking through from the inside of the shorts. That if that had been the case, then you would have seen darkening of the pockets as that sweat wicked through the front of the shorts, which is not present.
Right, but I guess then the other is that it then got wet somehow.
Right. And so it does seem more likely that it would have to be intentional on Michael's part. And it does seem more like something applied to the shorts rather than something seeping through the shorts from the inside. It did look that way to me, just, being honest, it did look like water was splashed onto the front of his shorts.
Yeah.
But the other thing is there's no spatter on Michael's t-shirt, but there is on the shorts, right? But I'm like, okay, but the shorts are more at the level of the wall where all of the spatter is hitting at that height on the wall. And there is no spatter the height of the shirt, so it does kind of make sense that there wouldn't be spatter on his shirt, but there would be on his shorts. And the one point that the defense did bring up during this questioning that I thought was really valid is when they moved Kathleen's body into the body bag, they did note that the seat of her pants was dripping blood. Now, Michael's shoes were sitting on the floor near Kathleen's body. Could blood have dripped onto the top of his shoes while they were moving her body? I think yes. I think that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't explain all the blood on the bottoms of his shoes and the bloody footprint on the back of Kathleen's sweatpants.
Yeah, I was curious about the sweatpants. I don't know, sometimes your sweatpants can kind of get twisted around. Is it possible that he stepped on the front of her leg, but it was twisted for whatever reason? Like, is there evidence that she was on her face and then turned around? Because how else can it get on the back of her pants?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. When looking at the pictures of her at the bottom of the stairs, you cannot see the bloody footprint, shoe print, I should say. So it's on the backside of the leg in the picture. Her sweatpants do not appear twisted in any way. And the shoe print is not smeared. So let's say it was twisted around on the front of her leg and he steps on it and it spins the leg of the sweatpants around and now is under her legs, but it had been on top. I mean, is that possible? In theory, maybe, but it seems to me that if that had happened, that you would see some smearing of blood as it, like his foot is slipping as it's turning the fabric, instead of like stepping down onto the fabric and having a print left that's very distinct and clear and not smeared.
Yeah. It also seems weird that you would be able to step on the back of her leg and it be stable, and you also don't, you know, because it's like her calf, like her lower calf, right? Like on the cuff, kind of.
Well, she did get up at some point. With the blood on the bottom of her feet, right? So it does seem like maybe she really was down and she was face down on the landing. Maybe all of a sudden she starts stirring. He's got blood on the bottom of his shoe. He steps on her calf. It's a tight space there. Blood transfers onto her sweatpants. He attacks her more. She ends up now in the position where she's face up, and the majority of the bleeding occurs while she's in that position.
Yeah, I don't know how you could explain that footprint in an innocent way, that shoe print.
Well, and because he's not wearing shoes when they come in. He's not wearing shoes. So why, and when do you like decide to take your shoes off after and then you're running around, like you're running to get towels or something and you get blood on your shoes and then you decide to take them off, but there's no, I mean, and then you wipe up the bloody footprints because I made a mess or like what? It just is weird. Like all of these things are weird. Why is there blood on the bottom of the shoes? I can understand blood getting to the top of the shoes, but they weren't sitting anywhere that blood would be leaking and getting onto the bottom of the shoes. And I thought, could that tennis shoe have gotten blood onto the bottom of it and it's laying face down, like sole side up, and it gets touched onto the pants? No, you can clearly see in the picture that the left shoe is sitting sole side down and it has blood drips on the top of it, which can be explained by they're moving her body, but you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
You know? So, I just don't see an explanation for a bloody shoe print on the back of her leg and him being barefoot. It just, it doesn't make sense to me.
No, yeah, not at all.
So I don't know. It's all a very strange scenario for sure. So that is where we are going to leave it, with all sorts of questions still as to what does all of this mean? It's a very confusing picture, and I can clearly identify with the first responders, the police officers on scene, the detectives looking at the case, the CSI techs, the blood spatter experts saying something is really off about this scene. It does seem really off to me too, and there are a lot of unexplainable elements. So I'm hoping that some explanations will be incoming. I want to understand this and see it more clearly, especially if he did not do this to his wife. Then I want to understand how all of these things could have occurred without his involvement, and I can't see it yet.
Yeah, yep, I'm kind of there with you. If you have any potential explanations that you've heard or have thought of yourself, or other questions that you have about the case just based on the testimony, we'd love to hear them. If you want to send us an email, you can do so at hungthepodcast@gmail.com. If you want to comment on our posts on Instagram, you can find us at hungpodcast. And you can also comment on our episodes on Spotify or on YouTube.
Yeah, and if there are other details that you're like, you know what, but they didn't tell you this, they didn't allow this in court, and this explains these things, you know, because sometimes it's missing details that make it not make sense. If you know some other details that you're like, yeah, well, actually, this makes perfect sense if you consider this, share that with Maryn too. You know, I'm sure she'll appreciate hearing all of the theories, and are there puzzle pieces that got plucked out and I don't get to see, and so it leaves me in confusion and unable to see the complete picture. That is going to conclude our episode for today, and like I said, next time we are going to talk about the death of Elizabeth Ratliff in Germany 18 years earlier, and see if we think this is additive to the case at all.
Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah. Okay, until next time, I'm Christy.
I'm Maryn.
And you've been listening to Hung.